Okay, so I'm Laura Otto, and what I'm presenting here is my final project for certification as a permaculture designer from the Permaculture Women's Guild. My faculty members have been Claudia van Gool and Aline van Moorbeke. And Aline's the one who's helped me wrap this all up for you these last few months, so thank you very much, Aline. Beep, why is it beeping? There you go. This is Hamburg, and this is where I live. And for my certification project, I've chosen to reimagine my own garden as a permaculture design. So that is this located under this yellow star that I've just added. And just for fun, so Hamburg is a town of 1 million, upwards of 1,700,000. Just for fun, here's the town that I grew up in, Gernau, population 9,000, and at about the same scale. So it's different. I just thought I'd show that. So I'm about to show an aerial view of our neighborhood for a little context. And it's going to be this view. Here it is. So this is our neighborhood. This is actually an architect's rendering of new housing developments that are slotted, going to look different now, but slotted to go into the fields to the north of us. But what you can see on this map is that it looks like there's a big green stripe from the top to the bottom of the photo, and in fact, it's a wildlife corridor which was contemplated that way by the city developers decades ago. And I have the good luck to live right in the middle of it, inside this red circle, but the site is actually much smaller. So what you can see of the site inside the red circle are only trees, the trees in the very middle. Oops. Go back. So I just wanted to mention, so we're kind of wedged between neighborhoods that are very socially, economically, and architecturally diverse and very heavily densely populated. This is our neighborhood. This is Blue Street. So anyway, let's see if I forgot anything. Trees in the center, and we are under them, and it looks like this. It's very, very dark in our garden. Coming from Iowa, I have a daydream, still a perfect ideal of a garden that's just bursting with beautiful ripe tomatoes and sweet corn and zinnias and sunflowers, and none of that is really possible in our garden. Instead, it's very dominated by many trees, and the compromise for years has been to not try for very many yields at all. We've had a few berries and a little bit of lettuce, and otherwise we've thought of it as a wildlife garden. So the question is, can we, with permaculture, change that, move the garden up a notch, get some more yields, enjoy it more, and maybe also make a response to the climate crisis in the process. And for me, when I went into the project that looked like this, finding the sweet spot between a sense of place, but also the wildlife and diversity aspect, and both reducing our climate footprint and also mitigating consequences of the climate crisis, which are becoming more and more frequent in our area. So that, not incidentally, that looks quite similar to the three earth care ethics of, the three permaculture ethics of earth care, people care, and future care. So I was in the right place with permaculture. So it's a tall order for a small site, and this is the small site. So the house, so the site is just what's in red in the middle of the screen here. The house is one end of an old farmhouse, which was a farmhouse and barn combined, which it was in the 1990s converted into 4 row house units. But you can still tell it was a farmhouse because there are these 4 trees, a row of four linden trees at the end, and more linden trees, 3 linden trees on the south side, and 6 of the 7, which were all planted at the time the house was built, so they're rather large, and 6 of the 7 trees are in our property, which is altogether only about 400 square meters. So that is a challenge to work with. And the other thing I should mention is that these trees have been pollarded for many years. They were pollarded when we got them, and so we continue to pollard them, which means cutting the branches off about every 3 to 4 years, so that they're just trunks, and then they sprout back, and they're not as large that way, and they also have the structural stability which they wouldn't if they were allowed to grow to large trees at this point. So so the next view is an attempt to, the other thing I wanted to say about, before I go on, about this map is that we and all of our neighbors don't have direct access to the street. So Arknoldstrasse is our street, or Arkwood Street. But we enter from this, I don't know, can you see my mouse? Yeah? Okay, from this drive, and all of us have entrances to the north. Here's our entrance, although the street is to the south of us. Okay. So it's important to be able to visualize these trees and just to understand the impact they have on the garden. And that this is an attempt looking from up here from the northwest side. So there we have it. These trees stand between us and the sun for a lot of the day during a lot of the year. And not only that, they also drop tree litter of one sort or another, buds, leaves, branches, and other little bits, pieces for a long season of the year. In fact, most of the year when it's not winter. And I estimated that at about 7 cubic meters to 10 cubic meters in the year. These are in the front, the 4 linden trees of 6. The other 2 you can't see that are smaller because they are pollarded than they would be otherwise. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that our neighbors look in over a hedge at our front yard and partly at our side yard as well. So we don't have much privacy there. Okay, sun, wind, and water. Because we're very far north, we get a long day of sunlight in the summer from 4:50 to 9:53, 4:50 a.m. to 9:53 p.m. with a almost 60-degree elevation is our highest elevation of sun ever in summer solstice at noon, and a very short day in the winter with a 12-degree elevation, and in fact at noon, and in fact that is just right for the sun to come in between the leafless trees and hit the side of the house, which is a bit of a permaculture feature from 100 years ago, a permaculture-like feature, which we enjoy. Water moves pretty much to the west. The property is quite flat, but water tends towards the west, and the western edge of the property is the lowest, and then it moves towards the neighbor's basement, unfortunately. And the western corner of the property is a lease from our neighbors to the south. So this is what all that shade looks like. We have deep shade in the summer to the south of the house, contrasted with quite a bright back of the house in the summer before, I mean, in the spring before the trees leaf out. And that is completely reversed on the front of the house with dark shade all winter, with no sun all winter and lots of frost and wetness and relatively hot, sunny, dry area there in the summertime. So the front of the house experiences the highest temperature swings. Oops, I'm doing that with my mouse without intending to, sorry. And just a second. And the side of the house, because it's in shade all morning, tends to be very wet and dewy all morning long, with the corner drying off the fastest. And there's also a kind of unique microclimate under the trees with no dew, less rain, and a lot of root competition, root pressure, making for pretty dry soil, which then can become muddy in the winter. So there's our use in winter and summer. It varies a lot, as one would expect. And here are the users. At least these aren't the users anymore. They were the users 2 years ago. We've all aged in one way or another since then. When we all sat down and talked about what our plan was, or what we would like out of a permaculture garden. And we came up with a set of patterns that to guide. What started as criteria and ended up as sort of guiding patterns for our design. So they include, high on everybody's list was a designated spot for a group to eat outdoors, like this, but cozier. Room to move, and we define that as room to play a two-person game of badminton on a lawn, a little bit of lawn. A clear privacy gradient so our neighbors aren't looking into our side and back lawn. Soul nourishing beauty and a sense of place, so more of the beautiful and less of the mess. And sit spots for all the different seasons and all the different places where it's nice in those seasons. Yields, we identified salad greens, berries, herbs, and cut flowers as the most successful yields we'd had, what we wanted more of, as well as habitat, of course, and composting, and the chance to try out different kinds of composting. And we mentioned fruit, or identified fruit, mushrooms, chickens with a question mark, and bees with a question mark as further yields. Keeping and caring for all those trees was a high priority, also because they're protected incidentally by the city. That's what it looks like when they're pollarded in the winter. That happens about every 3 years, 4 years. Lighting up the shadows, managing water to even out highs and lows, using that sunlight that reaches the back patio in winter, and making our paths for frequent tasks short. So it's a real plan. That was part of our specifications at the beginning. We identified 6 years and at most about 1,000 to 1,500 per year that we could spend. 6 years as the time frame, where that doesn't include pollarding the trees because that's an expense in itself. And because it's a permaculture plan, it must include reducing our footprint and giving back to the community. So this is what it looked like. So those were our personal boundaries. These are our physical boundaries, and we're not going to get into this, but there was an analysis that went on, and an analysis of our on-site resources. Because it's been gardened as a natural garden for over 10 years, almost all the plants on site are resources already. So there's not much plant buying that has to go on. And neighborhood resources. So I apologize for all the text. So this is mind's eye view of the final design. So, oops. It includes up here in the front, cooperating with the neighbors to share space with them for an additional bed, which we take care of, but which is on their property. Continuing to care for the urban flower beds and adding a fence here with berries and vegetables inside of it, and more berries closer to the house. So reinforcing a path here to a new gate in the fence for the bins, which are now on this side, to roll out without mud in the winter. And then using native shrubs as privacy screens to the back, adding in sit spots, ramsons, more berries, and a patio area. And the pond is also new, although we've had it now for a year and a half. So pollarding the lindens, keeping the lawn, but keeping it as wild as possible, or at least as wildflowery as possible. And using native shrubs and edibles in the back, and adding a chicken coop. So as well as compost near the house, new patios, and a new shed there, which is a kind of a cupboard almost against the side of the house. Changing the recycling pavers to change the shape and position of the winter patio, and pretty much making the back very wild and woodland-like. So those are the plants that we identified. And it's important in a permaculture design to stack functions. So for example, the chicken coops are increasing our resilience against disaster and extremes, but they're also providing food and recycling nutrients. And the chicken coop even provides a bit of privacy screen to the back patio. So trying to repeat that kind of pattern within the design. And we seem to have managed short paths for frequent tasks pretty well here. So there's a zone 1 for daily use, which is compact and close to the house in the front and back, and which expands to the side patio in the summertime. And otherwise, we have zone 2, which can stay less managed, and zone 4, which is really reserved for wildlife as much as possible. And I tried to make the zone 4 really as large as possible. It will need some management, but minimal management, hopefully, once it's established. And I've listed my daily paths, or our daily paths, here to the left, to the right, and try to ensure that they're all pretty short. So this is too much text for a slide, and I apologize, but I'm not quite sure how to make it less. But these are basically a list of ideas for how to encourage reciprocity in the neighborhood and networks of trust. And how we can further reduce our household footprint. And then moving on to implementation phases. So this is where we are right now. We still have our old patios and our old firewood, kind of ugly firewood shed, if you can call it that. But the very most important, and we've started a chicken coop, which we need to finish, but the very most important step is really water management along the back wall of the house, and starting with rainwater collection and including the pipe or hose towards more rain barrels as we reshape the patio and maybe add drains if necessary, to channel water away from the house in the back. The second part of phase 1 includes all those Zone 1 hardscape projects, which we'll need to probably hire people for quite a bit. And reorganizing the sheds. And then comes a phase 2, which is shifting the attention into zone 2 and into observing again and into planting some plants. So I'm sorry about all the text. And an implementation phase 3 includes time to try out new projects, including maybe reevaluating the car and making a decision about whether to get rid of it, and hopefully hosting workshops, things like cider making or composting would be fun to do. Optimizing the workflows around the chickens, trying to get as much of the chicken feed as possible from the yard or from the neighborhood, and expanding on the mushroom ideas. So we've already had some success with mushrooms indoors. I'm excited to try it. That is our plan. And I hope it was interesting and clear, and I'm open for questions.